Leon Karetkin speaks about spirituality, wellness, and self improvement in a way which I found to be very catchy, very relatable, and I also think that he does something which is incredibly important. He is basically half my age and speaks to an audience which is, of course, then much younger than myself. And I think that young people today need to see other people their own age who are working on themselves, working on their healing journey, trying to figure out what their talents are and also how to make the most of that, and also how to look after yourself in a world which can, to some extent, be quite chaotic. So I think that he is doing really important work, and that's why I wanted to speak to him. In our conversation together, we speak about his journey into spirituality, how he approaches it, and we also touch on many different other topics. I hope that you find this conversation just as interesting as I did, and I hope that you stay until all to the end because I think that this is such an important conversation. And also, if you are a parent with kids, or teenagers, I suppose, who are more around like 16, 17, 18, I would send this to them to show them that there are other young people out there who are also exploring this for themselves and what it means. And I think that Leon's content could be quite useful to them. So, without further ado, let's head in. How did you find your way into spirituality and self development?
So it all just in a way came naturally, but I did once meet a friend of mine. I was actually 13 years old back then. And, so I was pretty much on the verge of actually just starting out to be a teenager. I was, a child, so to say. Maybe I still am to some people now. So essentially, what happened was just we were talking, we met through school. He was a friend of mine, and he started talking to me about spirituality and all that kind of stuff. And mind you, I was a complete atheist at that time, so I didn't believe in any of that spiritual stuff. I thought it's just woo woo and, weird shit. But at some point, I really got into it, and it was quite interesting. There was just a mutual trust in that friendship that I actually understood what he was saying, and he was just the kind of person that triggered everything for me. We actually no longer even are in contact, but essentially what then happened is I was, kicked into the right direction. It was just as if the universe was like, okay, you should go here. And then I was on the right path, and then I did all my own research. I've read books. I've just the way that you acquire your kind of knowledge, everything just naturally came. And I believe that this was just the beginning of all of this. And it just keeps me interesting because I do strongly believe that as souls, we come here to have a purpose, to change something in the world and actually do something. And I am just fulfilling my purpose, so to say. So this is why I'm interested in it.
So you moved from atheism into
Mhm.
spirituality. That's a quite a psychologically big change, isn't it?
Yeah, totally. I'm a different person now. Like nothing about who I was before basically is the same now.
So how have you found that moving from atheism into spirituality has like helped you in your daily life now?
Well, on one hand, you actually have a lot of trust in yourself and, in the universe or God, as some people say. Basically, you just know that everything, it might sound a little delusional to some people, it's this famous quote of everything always works out for me, but it just does. That's just the truth. That's my reality. And it helps me out in the way that I just know that there's something way bigger and you don't see life as something meaningless or, it's just Jesus who's there or it's just nothing, basically. You know that there's a big purpose in living and we're all just the universe experiencing itself in some way. And that is what makes it so special to me. And in my life, to answer your question, it has helped me by really just guiding me and giving me a grounded and secure feeling. And also, of course, through that, you know that a lot of things in the world are not as they seem to be, to phrase it in the light way. And it's really great to just be able to question things and look through everything.
And what do you think is like the biggest discovery about yourself and sort of spirituality as you have ventured on that journey?
I've got to think actually. Wait. Mm, Well, it is the biggest thing I've really learned from that is that I am way more than I think I am. There's this also humans think that we are little ants, little kind of things, but we're actually giants, so to say. If you say it in a metaphorical way, we are capable to do way, way more than we think we are, and I have really discovered that. I don't know if that really answered the question, but so to say, yeah.
So when you say giant, are you talking about like the human potential?
Yeah, that does include this. I mean by this that we are something way bigger than we think we are. So it's not just, we were convinced usually as children, most people, we have this one body and that's it. Basically, we can't do anything unless someone allows us to, or this is just, the way it is, accept life as it is. The humans, what I meant by we are giants is that we are capable to doing so much more in this life, not just in a metaphysical sense, but in a physical sense and everything. You can achieve your goals, you can live a happy life, you can have a happy wife, you can do anything that you want to be, and it's all just about really creating it for yourself in a way and realizing that you are infinite and you have always been here and you always will be there in the matter, so physically and also spiritually.
Hmm. How does your friends sort of, because you were talking about that you're not friends
Mhm.
anymore with the person that sort of invited you into the spiritual space. How is the rest of the friends group
Mhm.
reacting to this sort of quite drastic change from atheism into
Mhm.
spirituality?
So I'm going to be honest, there's been a lot of friendships in my life that have failed and a lot of new ones that have emerged. The
Mm-hmm.
ones that I currently have, they support me and they basically have the same kind of thing. The law of attraction, as some people say, it's not just about manifestation or whatever. It also is about the people you attract into your life.
Mm,
And now I have friends that basically they support the entire thing. They also are into these kind of topics. Of course, here and there I have some, friends that I also had before, but my main circle, I'm going to be honest, it's quite small. I even struggle with that a little bit, but those people, they support me, I support them. We know that we sort of, how do you say, souls, they come to have contracts and do certain things here, and we're soulmates, me and my friends, we like to say. And even if at some point the journey together will stop, it is still something that is there and it's amazing.
so it's like treasure it for the amount that it sort of is with you, basically.
Yeah, of
And
course.
then
Like
when
you
it
never
leaves, it
know when
leaves.
something changes. You never
Yeah,
know
yeah.
if your friends are going to be there or if not. But usually, they are. And I'm kind of a person who has a very deep intuitive feeling whether someone's just some friend or someone who actually stays for my entire life. Usually, which of course I can't say, but because I'm not like 80 years old. But usually, you do know on a deep level, like who do you feel connected to on a soul level and who not. And it's important to really focus on and feel with deep within yourself, who are the people I'm hanging with? Do they have a good influence on me or are they, shitty people?
Yeah, yeah. No, I couldn't agree more. You are the average of your, what's that saying? You're the average of your five friends or something like that.
Yeah, the 5 people you spend most time with,
Yeah, it's who
truly.
you are, and I think that could be more true. And even recently, there's some friends in my life where I'm like, I think this friendship is sort of coming to an end, basically, because it just doesn't
Hmm.
gel any longer. And I mean, sometimes that can be difficult, right? Because you've been friends with them
Hmm.
for so long. So it's like psychologically, you're like enmeshed, and then you're gonna have to like start to disentangle that, and that can sometimes be, challenging in its own way, I suppose. That's really interesting. I mean, one of the things that I found really fascinating with your videos is that they were incredibly straight talking. I think that's really cool. There was actually one video where you were talking about, I'm not going to try and say it in the way that you did it, but you had been on TikTok and it was like, are you this style or that style or this style or that style, like
Hmm.
clean cheek or something like
Yeah, yeah.
that.
I was
And
making fun of, the aesthetics.
you were making fun of
And
the aesthetics, and I suppose I'm curious about where does the confidence to do that in such a way come from? Because it's quite a confident thing to do. I mean, I was confident when I was younger, and I'm confident now, but I have a lot of people in my life who isn't, and so I suppose I'm curious about where did that come from for you?
yeah, so confidence in and of itself, I believe, is something very deeply rooted within self-love. It's all about self-love, essentially. Many things are, but confidence is about, being secure in yourself.
Hmm.
Actually, confidence is nothing else but, inner security. As you say, the opposite of confidence, insecurity. So you are not secure, you are not safe. And you need to get to a point in your subconscious mind where you understand that when you speak your truth, even when you are direct, even when you say something that might be controversial, people, they might find it shitty, they might find it cool, but it's still fine and you still are safe. So it's all about signaling to your nervous system and your body in general that it is safe to be seen and it is safe to speak and therefore be confident.
Mm. And is this something you're like your family nurtured in you, or was it just always there?
Oh, totally not. No, it was not something my family nurtured at all. Of course, I am someone who's always, been a great speaker and all that type of stuff. But in general, I really did all that myself. My family, I even didn't grow up with a father who, was able to tell me about all these kinds of things and, oh, this is how you speak and this is who you are as a man. I didn't have that kind of figure. So I had to figure it out myself in a way. But of course, I also went to therapy. I have to mention that because that really helped me a lot.
Mm.
Spiritual therapy, it wasn't just something. I don't quite think I'm a big believer in the regular kind of therapy, but it's about, essentially just doing what you want to do.
Mm. So you
Yeah.
found that therapy really helped you to become more secure in yourself.
Yeah, but it's important to really find someone who's actually good and doesn't just, speak for hours and really feed that victim mentality that you have as a human, but actually, sometimes be direct and be like, this isn't true, but this is how it is, and this is how you're going to do that, on a psychosomatic level. So psychosomatic is anything, somatic just means body. So we store trauma, we store these kind of things in our bodies, and basically everyone has it. And it's important
Mm.
to really just get to it with someone professional.
Yeah, I very flippantly at the end of a session with a client where it was kind of over, and I said
Mhm.
something such as, "You realize the only person who's losing out here is you, right?"
Could you
And
repeat that? I didn't understand.
so basically, she was somebody who was carrying a lot of anger,
Hmm.
and you could see it in her body, basically, and just in her energy, in her presence. And she was talking about the ways in which that her anger was influencing her day-to-day life. And just without thinking and not being entirely tactful, I was like, "You realize the only one who's losing out here is you, right?" And really interestingly, like you could tell that she was like, "Oh yeah, the only one who's losing out here is me." And in that moment, she instantly changed, and like she started doing lots of work and blah blah blah. And then she came back to me a few months later, and she was like, "Tor, my husband would like to give you a gift because I haven't shouted at him for months."
That's interesting. Yeah,
Which
so
was
you really shifted the whole perspective for her.
so in that moment, the whole thing shifted. When sometimes, it's like perhaps we try to be more tactful rather than direct, basically. But I
Hmm.
suppose sometimes by a bit of directness, it sort of gets to like the core of the thing, basically. And she just
Hmm.
had to realize that actually she is wasting her life by carrying this anger, by not being able to let go of the past, basically. She just cannot forgive and cannot forget. And that's what was her that was one of her issues. So in terms of, obviously, you don't have to share if you don't want to, but what would you say in sort of your therapeutic experience? What was it about that that was the most meaningful?
It was essentially about realizing that if I really just sum it up in a everything way, it's about realizing that everything that has always happened to me, trauma, insecurity, anything, it was all just for the greater good of mine. And once you realize this, all the anger usually disappears. And I know it sounds crazy. I mean, I'm not someone who was like abused as a child or something, but of course I did have some crazy experiences and my father wasn't there. And realizing that all of this led to one end and me alchemizing it in the way that I do now is what really is special. So I am the person that I am today because this happened. And I'm not saying this in a way of, okay, I am my trauma and I identify with that kind of thing. But I do know that from this therapy, I have grown and I've become so secure and so loving towards myself and other people. And that's what's really special.
Hmm. And do you think that the reason why you want to share about spirituality and self-development is because you know the ways in which that it has benefited you? Is that the inspiration, or is it something else?
Yes, in a way it is. I'm not gonna lie, I'm my biggest inspiration, and that's something no one should be afraid to admit. It is how it is. And it is something that I want to share with the world. I create this kind of content. I talk about these things. I also am planning on doing some coachings very soon, not like one-on-one, but and I believe that this is something that I want to share with the world because I want to leave an impact. I want to change something, I want to do good. I want to help other people. And it's not for the money, it's not for doing anything, but it's really just for that deep sense of inner fulfillment that I know I'm doing something good. And as a soul, I came here to change something in this world. And especially in this generation that might be, on one hand, a little corrupted, do something different and change the world.
How is the generation corrupted?
I said corrupted in a way. I believe it's not corrupted, but there are some nuances and some people who you just look at them, especially my age, and I can't quite resonate with them. But I do not judge it. I just think that's fine. If someone lives that life, that is perfectly fine. Something different is meant for everybody. I wouldn't
Mm.
actually say that this generation is completely corrupted. No, but of course there are some things that might not be great, especially with boys my age.
Yeah, it is really interesting with men, young men your age, though, right? Because I think it's, at least in the UK where I live, I think the highest rate of men who ends their life with suicide is
Mhm.
men 18 to 34 or something like that. And the statistic is like through the roof, basically. It's like through the
Mhm.
roof compared to any other demographic. So there's clearly something which is happening in that age group specifically when it comes to like mental health and well-being and so on and so forth. So it's really interesting. There's loads of interesting conversations going on online right now about how do we address that in such a way that it doesn't create even more division, right? Because I think there's a lot of content online which are directed towards men, which is actually making it worse, right?
Yeah, surely.
Which is actually making it worse. So how can one make content that actually makes it better? And what are the underlying causes, basically?
So I would first of all say that most art forms nowadays, to answer the question, how does that cause it? First of all, they try to, in a way, of course, their message is, for example, let's take the movie The Substance. Have you seen it? Do you know about it?
No, tell me.
No? Okay, so there's this movie. It's really famous on TikTok and stuff. I'm just gonna use it as an example. It's about a woman. She essentially takes some kind of drug, and then she has a better version of herself, someone who is like great, perfect, and beautiful, and that's done in a very brutal way. But what a lot of art forms, speaking content, people on here, especially men, do, and even like movies and TV shows. What I'm saying is, it's a big range of things and possibilities. They criticize things, but they do it in a way that actually romanticizes it. And they try to make it seem as if they're trying to make the world a better place by showing that this is bad and this is that, but in a subliminal way, our subconscious and a human mind sees it as something good in a way. I don't know if you understand what I mean, but in a way, a lot of the things that we see, they just romanticize depression, they romanticize this, and that. And especially a lot of people in the personal development space, a lot of those men, even women, doesn't matter, like they all use the certain pain points. They look at your pain, they use your insecurities to do something
Mm.
out of that. And I believe that can be great in a way if you want to use someone's insecurities to do something great out of that to transform it, but not if you say such rude things, so to say, that actually make them even more insecure and create anger around themselves. This is why I
Mm.
believe it's important to work with a professional who actually knows about it and isn't just a YouTube video, although YouTube videos are amazing.
Yeah, because I mean, we both do them, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it was really interesting. There's this new creator in England. I mean, I think he's been going on for a while, but he's really exploded recently called Gary's Economics. And it talks about the
Hmm.
economical situation in England. And there's a reason why I'm telling you this, because there was a debate between him and an entrepreneur on the Diary of a CEO. Do you know the Diary of a CEO
Yeah, I
with
do.
Stephen
I
Buffett?
haven't read it though, or heard. It's a
Yeah.
podcast and the book, I know, but I
Yeah.
haven't read it though, but I do know about it.
So recently he had a debate with somebody and arguably Gary is probably more on the left and then the entrepreneur is more on the right, basically. And the entrepreneur is like, take responsibility, have agency, and all of that is really, really important. But what Gary was saying, which I thought was really powerful, which is, and I'm paraphrasing here, it's like, because sometimes we blame ourselves for something not working out, right? But imagine if you're already working two jobs and you are trying to sort of build a family and so on and so forth, but actually it's the economy which is like crushing you. And he said something really powerful to the entrepreneur, where he was like, if you tell man that they're not working hard enough and they're not doing enough, that's actually making it worse for them, and actually need to change certain things around the economy. And I suppose where I'm going with this is that it's a really interesting things about messages around shame, guilt, empowerment, confidence. It's like, how can we do it in such a way which is more holistic in a way? I don't know where I'm going with this, but I think the messaging is really key. And I suppose from your point of view, what are some of the messaging that you have found the most useful in terms of your own development?
Well, what I've seen in my point of view, is just that it's important to uplift people into action and not put them down towards
Yeah.
action. So you can put someone down, for example, be like, you're shitty, you don't do enough, you're a bad person, and then they're going to try to do something against that. But what you can also do is you can actually tell them what really is true. So you're an amazing person, you don't have to show anything to anyone, all these kinds of things, so to say. And then from that, if the action that actually is taken is something that can really do something great, they can then
Mm.
do something that they really feel passionate about, and then not something that they feel pressured into. And yeah, that's so important to understand.
Mm. What are some of the messages in the spiritual space right now that you are finding the most disparaging? Like, because it sounds to me like you've done quite a lot of research on like the
Mhm.
spiritual space, and so have I. And I think so much of it, I'm like, really? Is this the message somebody's sharing? Like, what are some of the pitfalls that you've gone into, and then you've gone, oh, I didn't need to do that? Like, what do you think?
So, first of all, I do believe that in every message and in everything that someone shares online and they have their own message, there's always some things that you need to take away from it. So, take what resonates, leave what doesn't, is what these tarot readers
That
always
is
say.
that
You
is
probably
literally
heard
what
this
I mean,
quote.
and I have done it myself. I'm like, take what resonates and leave the rest. I have said
Yeah.
it. I have done it, but it's
I know. It's not bad. It's fine. And I believe this isn't just something about tarot readings. It's about your everyday life and also about the content you consume. So just take what you believe resonates and what is true, and simply leave what doesn't. And there are some trends and some things that I find a little unsettling, so to say. So, for example, when people, especially in the spiritual space, they on one hand talk about one thing, then they contradict it with another, or it could be something where they really politically try to say some things that I find a little problematic or weird. And it's in a way of like choosing a side. On one hand, you're speaking about, oh, these people are bad and we should all be ourselves and, love and light, so to say. But then on the other hand, people talk about, okay, I hate this political group and they're the bad, and I hate those people. And then, it's on both sides. There are people in the spiritual community who position themselves a little more left, some that are a little more right. And I believe that we should just drop those labels. Like,
mm,
why do you care? I even made an entire video on my YouTube, no, on my TikTok account in German, where I basically said, you don't have to pick a side, because there were elections over here. And I was like,
hmm
why is everyone like, you have to pick a side, you have to go vote, you have to do this? Okay, you can do it if you want to, but do not pressure someone, especially in the spiritual space. What is the whole point of talking about the bad elites and how they control things and, whatever you've heard about it, if you don't actually do something yourself? The real way that you vote and the real way that you change something in this world is by doing something yourself and not blaming anyone else for it and blaming some other group of people for it. And I believe in the
Yeah.
spiritual space, that can be quite a problem with a lot of guys.
Yeah, no, I agree. And you see that with both sexes and genders, is that you see a lot
Mhm.
of victim mindset and like
Yeah,
blaming everybody else. No, absolutely. Instead of doing something about it, you know?
yeah.
I
A lot
mean,
of things also just come from trauma, I believe.
yeah.
Speaking of political stuff, a lot of people who are eat the rich, do this and that. I'm gonna be honest. I'm gonna be, as you said, very direct and straightforward. Get a life, like do something. Why do you care so much about other people and what they do, and you try to harm them instead of focusing on yourself, on what kind of good you can do in this world?
Yeah, I mean, it is a sort of complex multifactorial thing though, because um like let's just take Trump as like an example, right? I actually find it
Mhm.
really difficult to talk about politics from like a spiritual space. It's something I do very rarely. And I agree with
Mhm.
you. It's like we shouldn't blame anyone and we should take responsibility and accountability for our own lives. And I'm just using him as like a metaphor, basically. But at the same time, the decisions that anyone, let's take it away from him, like anyone with power will have an influence on a lot of people, which is out of our control. Let's say, I don't know, inflation. You know that it's like like I was talking to somebody the other day about, and she's doing a money mindset course. I was like, great, do that. Think about money, like think about how your perspective, etc., and so on and so forth and so forth. But I also said to her, but at the end of the day, if inflation goes up, it doesn't matter how you think about money. Inflation is going to go up, and everything is going to get pricier. So it's like a fine balance, right? Because you can't. Then they are separate, but they're also not separate in a way, right? It's like a really,
Yeah, yeah.
it's a really complicated thing, which just isn't that straightforward, right?
Yeah, I mean, of course you can battle it and, go on the streets or whatever, but what I'm saying is that sometimes they're just things out of your control. I myself am really into wabi-sabi, Japanese philosophy, and what
Mm-hmm.
it states essentially is live in the present moment and whatever is out of your control, just, use it the right way. There's this one famous saying you've probably heard where they said, when you're a sailor, you don't try to force the wind into a different way, but you just adjust your sails so it flows into the right direction. So if inflation is up, maybe you go change your life so inflation is not something that actually is bad for you,
And
if you
I would
think.
do the same. Like
Yeah.
that is exactly how I would personally approach it, and that is how I. But I suspect that I'm making an assumption and maybe a judgment is that some people, because of they have perhaps created a lifestyle where they need lots of stuff, right?
Mhm.
And then if you're somebody who needs lots of stuff and prices go up and you don't earn any more money, it's going to screw you up psychologically, right? So then it's about
Yeah.
changing that mindset. That's I suppose that's what I'm kind of getting at in a way, because
Hmm.
I just sort of I just adjust, like you said, I just change my sales and that's fine. But that's because I've practiced or made a practice which is that kind of way, basically.
Yeah, also material things and what you've just mentioned, I even made an entire YouTube video about that. They can only bring out what you already have on the inside. So if you buy yourself a new supercar or get, even a Birkin bag, something that's a great achievement, like most people want it, but it's still at the end of the day something that can only bring out the inner love and everything that you already have within yourself, and it will never make you completely happy. And if you are dependent on material things and the things that you can buy yourself, you're never actually going to be fulfilled. But what is really fulfilling is sharing your message, doing something in the world, and whatever kind of gravity you feel like doing it. It's all just up to you, essentially.
Mm. So let's say somebody was watching this and they wanted to start out on their spiritual journey and
Mhm.
self-development journey. Like, what would be your three top tips?
Okay, I'm gonna have to think about that one. Wait a sec. Mm. So the first thing would surely be to just enjoy the journey. Even if someone's heard it 1,000 times, it still is something that is totally important. Enjoy what you're doing. It's not about the outcome. You could be in a beautiful penthouse, or you could have the newest achievement that you have always dreamed of, but the most amount of fun you will experience is actually while working. Something I've seen myself while you're doing what you're passionate about, and when you're on your spiritual journey, that is the exact whole thing. That is the journey you're on. And sometimes, imagine it like this. You would get to a certain destination, and but you fly in first class. The first class is so beautiful, you get served everything, and you fly for like 24 hours and you absolutely love it there. You wish you could spend the rest of your life there. Then you get out of there and you notice, wait, maybe the journey was the actual most fun part. So imagine if you had a trip like that, right? So essentially, if you are on the journey and you do the certain things that are getting you towards your destination, that is what really is going to be fun, and the results are just a side effect, so to say. And that also is a mindset shift I would recommend to everyone. Once you see the results as just a nice little side effect, things are just going to flow way easier, because if you focus and actually get your self-worth attached to a certain kind of outcome, then it's probably not even going to work out, or you're going to feel shitty.
So that's one. What is so
Yeah.
that's enjoy the journey.
Mm-hmm.
I agree.
Yeah. Number two is the person you are today is not the person you're going to be tomorrow. I used to be someone, listen, I was really holding on to the person I was. I was like, I know there's this transformation personally on my spiritual path that I need to go through. And it was painful. And I even have gone through some suffering or whatever. But I noticed that maybe I just need to let go of this constant control of trying to be the person that I am today and just let things flow. Like what you want to be, it's fine. You're always going to be to change. I'm not the person I was 3 months ago, and I'm also not the person. And 3 months ago, I was also not the person that I was then 3 months ago. Like people always change, and so will you. And if you allow the change and you not hold on to the person you are today, even if the change is painful, and it will be certainly here and there, you need to really just be fine with it. Like sometimes you think, this is how I'm going to be for the rest of my life. I have these worldviews. I think this is how I look. This is how I act. This is my life. And actually, it's not. It's just for this present moment. And in the future, it might be completely different. So just be fine with change.
Hmm.
You know, that's
And
very
what's number
true.
three?
Hmm. And number three is to really just not stress it and to just really be yourself. If you can literally just forget about all the other advice and anything that anyone's ever told you, if you learn to just simply evolve out of everything that's been told to you and just be yourself, be the person you unapologetically believe you were made to be, everything's just going to flow and it's going to be so, so easy. Because what spirituality to me is essentially, if I were to just say my own kind of definition of spirituality, is to just be yourself, and the sole mission you have on this planet Earth to fulfill it in a loving way. And if you do this with ease and love, it's just going to be amazing for you and other people as well.
Yeah, ease. Thank you for sharing that. Ease is a word that I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, just creating ease with everything that I do. Just
Mm-hmm.
trying to add ease to all of it. I think if I would add one thing myself, and I mean this is going to sound spiritually trite, but for me it's about stillness, right? I think all of those things that you just mentioned, for me at least, emerges from stillness, right? If you're able to create stillness within, everything else will follow, basically. I mean, for me that
Yes,
for
truly.
me for me that comes through meditation. Of course, it's different for everybody.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, from stillness within, all everything else just like everything follows from that because I can that's
Yeah.
when I get into trouble, at least it feels like to me, is when it becomes less still inside and the little gremlins are like wah, 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 wah. If I'm
Mm-hmm.
able to like get myself back to stillness, everything is fine.
Yes, stillness, but not stagnancy. That's also something really important. You need to know,
Mm,
am I being still? Am I being peaceful? Or is it just as if I'm like dead? Nothing is going on. And while that can be great as well, I'm just saying, yeah, I love what you're saying. It's amazing. Meditation, it can also be such a great tool for ascension, but meditation, I believe, shouldn't even be such a huge thing where people, oh, meditate this and here and that, and those are the techniques and those are the crystals you need to use. Just sit the fuck down and do whatever you want to do. It's not that deep. Just it's actually normal for us humans to meditate and have moments of stillness, of solitude. We were never made to always have our phone nearby and we can,
mm,
scroll on TikTok and watch some kind of brain rot videos instead of actually just focusing on ourselves and our bodies, practicing awareness. How do I feel? What am I doing?
mm.
That's just what's important. And that's what actually would be normal if we didn't have our phone in between certain events that are happening all throughout our days. We would have moments of solitude, and that would be regular meditation. I believe a
Yeah.
walk can be just as meditative as actual meditation when you're sitting is can be.
Yeah. No, you're absolutely right. If the phone wasn't there, there would naturally just be a lot more stillness, which is why we have to sit
Mhm.
down and put the phone away and be like, I'm going to now meditate for however long you decide to meditate. So, where do you see, I mean, of course, we can't, it'll surely just unfold, but if you would imagine, like, where do you see this work taking you over the next 5 years?
Okay, wait a sec. I'm gonna have to open the door again for my second cat.
Sure.
He's really cute. Okay, now both cats are here. No one should be disturbing us now. So could you repeat the question again?
So, in terms of your offering and spirituality and self-development, and like, where do you see this taking you over the next 5 years?
I believe that in the next 5 years, I'm gonna just like explode. The things that I manifested even for this year, what I have on my vision board, it came true in just like 2 months, and I couldn't have ever thought of this. And I believe that the growth and whatever the universe has to offer is just it's going to be exponentially, especially in my age. I'm going to have such a huge impact. I already do at my age, and those kind of people everywhere on the internet. It's just amazing. And in the next 5 years, I'm going to see myself not only, being more rich than I am now. I see myself being even more spiritually fulfilled, developed, also maybe having some lower points in my life, but that is also all normal and it is part of the journey. And I see myself as a very successful young man in a couple of years.
Hmm. And I suppose it's interesting that you went to the low points because I suppose I was the next question I was going to ask is like, what do you foresee being some of the challenges that you're going to need to overcome?
I do not yet know. I'm going to be honest, I do not yet know any of the challenges because they always resurface when they have to resurface. At the moment, things are pretty still, pretty peaceful. I've had some transformations happen in the last couple of months, and they've been great. But usually, some lower points or some challenges I'm expecting at the moment, I do not yet know. I do believe, well, I do not believe, I know that they are going to be there. And when the time comes, I'm going to face them and then go out of that even happier than I was before. A metamorphosis always happens when it has to happen. A butterfly, it can't be like, okay, I have to wait another 10 days for this. No, the time comes and that's when it comes.
That is absolutely when it comes. I agree. And so often it's out of our control, you know.
Yeah, totally.
The cosmos is like, it's gonna happen now, thank you very much.
Hmm.
So, where can people find you online, Leon?
Could you repeat that?
Where can people find you online?
So people can find me on YouTube. I have a YouTube channel. It's called Leon's Place, but I'm going to change it to Leon Karetkin, which is my actual name. I think it sounds more authentic. Then also on TikTok and also on Pinterest. I'm very into, aesthetics and beautiful things. So on Pinterest, you can also find me. But also I have a German TikTok account that I started. So if anyone watching this is German, feel free to check it out. It's really interesting as well.
And just final question, like what kind of offerings do you think you'll be offering in the future? Like what do you see yourself
Mhm.
like earning an income apart from perhaps YouTube videos and so on and so forth?
So, what I see myself really offering to people and changing, leaving an impact by is creating courses and also just doing something in general. Also, I not only have my YouTube videos, then I also have things where I can go deeper into it. I would love to also create a community, so to say, and a space where it actually is like its own little universe, so to say. I'm really interested in it, and I am currently working on it. I will be launching my first kind of course or something in the next couple of months. I would really love that, on these kind of topics that I'm very passionate about. And I know that people need them and it is totally in demand. Things such as manifestations and, also aesthetics and all these kind of things that are really, really potent and in need for transformation for a lot of people.
Hmm. Thank you. Thank you for sharing. I really appreciate it. Thank you for coming on.
Of course. Thank you so much as well.
Thank you so much for listening to this conversation between Leon and I. I hope that you found it as fascinating as I did. And if you did, hit that like button, subscribe button, and I look forward to seeing you in the next video.